Hello, this is Bruno pelletier-bacquaert, and this is our next video on that vast topic of the chromatic scale and chromaticisms in general. So let's see, to recap a little bit, we started with the chromatic scale itself. So I showed you in that very first video, I showed you a few fingerings for the chromatic scale by itself. Then we started inserting one extra note into various scales, starting with the major scale. But then we could do that with any scale or mode, and that's that concept of the bebop scale. Just simply adding one extra chromatic step within the scale. Then the video after that, we were looking at approaching the various chord tones of a triad. And we did that with the major triad. I was showing you that with a C major triad. And what I suggest we do today is use that same principle of encircling each note of the triad, but use that same principle on each and every note of the major scale. So here's what exactly I'm talking about. Remember, for C major triad, the three notes were C, E, and G. And the idea was to encircle the note, each one of those notes, with a diatonic step from above and a chromatic step from below. So the C note, I had this. The C note was going to D and then approached from below with a half step through that B note. Then with the E note, so the next diatonic step was actually F, which is up a half step in this case, but I still had, no matter what, my chromatic step from below, so D sharp into the E. And then finally the G note, so the next diatonic note was A, and then my approach note from below is F sharp, half step, right? So it gave me this pattern. Systematically with all of my chord tones. So now what I'm talking about, if I do that with each and every note of the major scale, this is what we're going to look at. So we already know what those C, E, and G notes are going to be like. Let's look at the next note. So the next note in my major scale is D. So the next diatonic step is going to be E, but the chromatic step from below my D is going to be C sharp, right? So coming from the C, which is already encircled, I get this, right? Then I continue with the E, so we already know what the E enclosure looks like this, right? The next note is F, so F, the next diatonic step is going to be G, and approached from below with E. So that's probably the weak link of that pattern. It's when we approach the F note, because it doesn't really sound like a chromaticism because we already heard the E note, which on top of it was even a chord tone. So it sounds a bit weak at that point, but that is part of the pattern. So you know, it's sort of buried in there. We're not really gonna worry too much about that. Then we continue with the G, so we get this. So G, the next note goes up to A, and the approach note from below is going to be F sharp, so we already know that. Then we go to A, so let's encircle our A note. So A is going to B, and the half step from below is going to be G sharp, resolving back into A. And then finally, we need to do the same thing with the B note. So B is going to go up a half step to C, and then the chromatic step from below is the A sharp, and then we land on C. So we get this pattern: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, so it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting sound. So you want to do that first within one octave. You don't have to do the whole position yet. so if I were doing, say, this area here, so my major scale is going to look like this in this position, right? So I'm going to do the same thing. So encircle the C, the D, the E, the F, the G, the A, the B, and then the C, etc. So do each position. Well, I'm not going to go through each and every one, but like I said, go through one octave at a time. I'll show you this next one here. So if I'm looking at this position here, that's my C major scale here in position, right? So my pattern is going to look like this. So that really will open up your ears. I know it did for me when I first started playing this little exercise. It really opened up my ears in a way where I started hearing everything as being able to be approached chromatically. Basically, every note that you might play, no matter if you're thinking of an arpeggio or thinking of a scale, any note you play, you can always meander your way and create some interesting tensions into it or even around it, and that really makes your playing a lot more interesting. Of course, as usual, when you play those things, it's only going to become part of your vocabulary if you are able to hear it. So hum as you practice this. If there's one video that I will not need to make is how you need to sing and hum everything you do, because that's like, it's been a recurring theme in just about every single one of my videos. So apologies if you guys are tired of hearing that, but I think it's a very important message that needs to be brought up more than once. All right, so if I'm looking at some kind of C major chord, I'm going to have this. Actually, the end was the what did I do? Okay, so that's the two octaves. And that's the thing with chromaticisms. You know, eventually it's not really just some mathematical pattern. You are used to hearing certain approaches, you're used to hearing certain sounds that need to resolve. I mean, that's the whole principle of chromaticisms. We generate a tension, but we need to resolve it. And then the possibilities are endless. So you can start your pattern maybe through an arpeggio, and then the next fragment of your line is going to be a fragment of a scale that's that has those chromaticisms inserted, and then back to an arpeggio, and then just random notes. So that's when you engage the ear, all of a sudden you're not necessarily just thinking, oh, I'm doing this just with my triads, or I'm doing this with each and every note of my scale, and so forth, right? So do it mechanically, like I was showing you at first, but eventually learn to sing those things, and then let your intuition kick in. All right, so that's it for today's video. If you have any questions on fingerings or anything about the concept, just let me know. So please make sure you subscribe to the channel. I don't always remind you guys to do that, but the more people subscribe, the better it is for me in particular, right? And the better it is for me, the more I'll continue doing this, and hopefully you will benefit in the long run from it. Okay, so with that said, have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you some other time. Bye.